we've done it, you can too, is very, very important. I mean, community is everything when you're trying to get through a tough spot. And I think really truly that's what counseling does, right? We try to normalize the experience, say, yeah, you're not the first person I've dealt with who's struggling with this way. And then the client relaxes a little bit and breathes a sigh of relief. He goes, oh, thank goodness, I thought I was unique. And we go, no, you're not actually. I think that what you're doing, what we're doing with this podcast, and what other podcasters are doing, especially with our field, is we're breaking through the stigma by normalizing the conversation. I really appreciate that. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, and you know what? I can definitely appreciate. I mean, part of that, I know I skipped to like, oh, and then I made the podcast, but it was like an idea, and I kind of, I was excited about it. I was like, oh, maybe I could really do this. And of course, like, thank God for YouTube.
Right.
Like I did a lot of that, and I did a lot of listening, and I really, something, I don't know, it was something just told me to go ahead and do it. But it wasn't like, oh, I just did it. In fact, like how you were just saying, it's important for us to have like that, to build that community and kind of have that affirmation around us, because I think whenever we're doing or stepping into something new or unfamiliar, or, going after something that we really want, whether that's a goal, for me, for sure, there was some doubt. And the closer that I got to doing it, that doubt kind of got a little bit louder. And so I had to intentionally, like, surround myself with people with messages, even if the people maybe weren't there, which I was really fortunate. And I've heard, graduate school and cohorts, can sometimes have their own, little dramas and stuff. But I had a really supportive and just like almost like family cohort. And I was scared to even bring up the idea at first of I, would like to do a podcast, or this is what I'm going to do. But when I put it out there, the right people came to support me in that. And it was kind of holding me accountable as well.
Yeah, now you
scary.
spoke it into existence, and it's real. You can't run away.
Yeah. And but it was scary, and even I think I even shared a little bit about this on the post that I did of the episode with you, and I was thinking, oh wow, the more that I read about this person and the work that he's done, and I at one moment thought to myself, I had that who am I kind of moment. Who am I to talk to this person? And I've had those moments before where you get really eager to do something, and then you're in it, and then you think, what am I doing? Who am I? Am I, should I even be here? I don't feel like I belong here type of feeling. And, but I mean, at the same time, I did it, and I did it scared. I did it a little nervous, and I definitely don't regret it. In fact, it's when I pushed past that feeling of fear, or, not even past it, I just drug it along kind of with me, that I was able to, get to the places that, I know that I truly belong.
I think what you're describing there is something that people refer to as imposter syndrome, and I don't necessarily like the phrase, but it's the idea that wherever you are, you think you don't belong based on whatever your perceived merits are in comparison to other people's perceived merits, and it's interesting because whenever you experience that, I've experienced that. I've sitting on boards and commissions and coalitions and committees and all this stuff that I look around, I'm like, what am I doing sharing the table with these people? And yet there I am, and there you were, doing the podcast with all the people and the things. And so the results are self-evident. It's like no longer do you have to ask, what are you doing there? Because it doesn't matter. You're there. And I think that's an interesting reminder to say, well, wherever you are in life, if you're questioning why you are where you are, and comparing yourself and maybe losing a little steam or enthusiasm or even self-confidence, don't, because you're doing it. Just keep swimming, and eventually you'll find your way to Sydney, I guess. No, Lost in Finding Nemo there. But talk a little bit about the fear, though, because you and I, before we came on and started recording, we were discussing the idea of transitions, and I think that's something that's really relevant to a lot of the listening audience about everybody has transitions in life, and some of those transitions are very challenging. Some of them are very easy. Some of them we choose. Some of them are chosen for us. And fear is a big component of any change because you're invariably letting go of that which you know, which is very comfortable and familiar and predictable, and stepping into something that's unknown and maybe doesn't come with a lot of guarantees. So talk a little bit about the transitions you've made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of life, different transitions, but that's a word that I've come across, and I've, when I'm in that comfortable, maybe position of something's, in a stage of life where things are kind of familiar, right? You've been in that stage for a while and it's comfortable and everything. And I was thinking about this, even the word transition, or you hear the word, becoming more aligned, and those sound so good until the transition looks like, a loss of a job, or the transition looks, like the loss of a relationship, or just a big life transition that you didn't plan for.
Or even the ones you do plan, like having children.
Yeah. Or having children, all of those things that sometimes we feel like that we don't have control over, those can be really scary. And I think that's where, like you said, the fear of the unknown comes in. So I've had definitely a few of those. So I had my eldest daughter, she's 11. I had her young. I had her at 18.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge transition. That was scary. I even looked back at myself at that time, and that was a scary place to be.
And I want to, if you don't mind, Christina, I want to pause real quick and point out that the idea that if you're a parent and you're listening to this, it's absolutely okay to be scared about the things that you're supposed to be happy about. Right, like having children, or getting the new job, or the promotion, or it's like, or moving into a new home, and then or moving into a home for the first time. If you've never bought a home and you've only known rentals, and the landlord takes care of everything, and all of a sudden the gravity hits you, where you're like, wow, I'm responsible for a lot of stuff now. Like, it's completely okay to be terrified at the thing that society says you should be happy for. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh yeah, thank you, that's me, that was for you. But go on, please talk about your fears.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great point, because I think, and that's something that I talk to clients about a lot is, it's okay to hold both of those things. It's okay to hold this feeling and this feeling.
Absolutely.
And then when I was kind of hit with it, and some of the things that you just mentioned are actually the things that I've recently experienced, buying a home. And that's something you plan for, and it's something that's kind of like the big goal. And I found myself, with just, a bunch of emotions. It was fear, it was excitement, it was anxiety provoking at times, it was just a lot,
Yeah.
And at the end, it's beautiful. Buying a home, I don't regret it. And so it was same thing, with the transition from one job to the next. I think just even what you said is there's like this, sometimes we have to grieve, what ended, and then we're also holding the excitement of something new. And I think sometimes where we can get stuck is if we don't see that, that's something new. And we kind of lose hope for that. I think that's where we can sometimes get stuck. But I've been really fortunate to, again, be surrounded or put myself in places like, even in your presence, hearing from you, and just being inspired by you. I've been fortunate to have people like that also kind of speak into my situations, or just, shed some light. And I think that's really helpful when we feel like we're alone, or going through a transition that no one's gone through, which is really highly unlikely.
Yeah, truly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that I am somehow influencing your life, because you and I still have never met face to face. So it's always bizarre to me when people say stuff like that. I mean, it's a huge compliment. But thank you, and it means a lot. to the point about transitions and fear and how it's easy just to slide back into what you know, I would encourage people. I've said this before. I'm maybe not on this podcast, but elsewhere, that if you talk to anybody who studies development, any developmental theorist, they talk about how and why things grow, whether it's biological, like a seed growing into a plant, or whether it's religious or spiritual or psychological or emotional development, whatever you're developing through. In order to grow, you have to go through a period of what's called disequilibrium. And disequilibrium is not equilibrium. Equilibrium is everything's very balanced and stable and steady and predictable. And disequilibrium is out of that. So it's being pushed out of your comfort zone. That is how you grow. You can't grow if you stay in equilibrium. If you're just balanced all the time and nothing's moving or changing, growth isn't occurring. So, similarly, the seed is cool as a seed. It's not going to do anything. But if you put it in dirt and add some water, it's got to pop out of the shell, and then it's got to push up through the dirt, and then it's got to grow some buds, and then it's got to bear some fruit, and so forth. Those are all periods of disequilibrium that eventually create growth. And in a human being, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So in those periods of transition, when you experience the fear, you experience the doubt, just know that that's probably a period in which you're about to grow, or you're currently growing, you just can't see the result yet. So keep pushing through it, and you'll find yourself in a better place on the other side, typically.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's something that I've had to constantly be reminded of, through transitions. I think it's, that's exactly it. It's being reminded that this is preparing you for something, right? If you're changing, if you're uncomfortable, it's an opportunity. It's like perfect soil for growth. And it's building some muscle somewhere that you're going to need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your journey been like through this process of being as an associate or an intern, somebody who's not yet licensed independently? What we have, I'm explaining this for the listening audience. We have people called supervisors, and our supervisors are basically like if you think of a resident doctor, they're practicing under another doctor's license, but they're a full doctor. They're licensed. They've graduated medical school. We're in the same boat. So as an intern or associate, we're practicing under somebody else's license for all intent and purpose. And so we attend supervision on a weekly or twice weekly basis, and we get feedback from our supervisors, and we staff our cases and that kind of thing. Talk to me a little bit about what your experience has been through this process, because I know that you are going through tremendous growth, probably above and beyond most of your peer colleagues, simply because you're doing the podcast. And because you're doing the podcast, you're putting yourself in touch with more professionals, obviously, and then you're receiving your feedback. And I know that your analysis of self probably outpaces most people in your similar age group, demographic, fledgling stage of your career. And I guess what I'm wondering is, as your supervisor is coaching you through this process, and you're growing faster maybe than some of your peer colleagues, or whatever the supervisor may have experienced, how's that relationship been? Like, are you finding yourself being challenged more, or being held back a little bit? Are you having to be told to, pump the brakes, or what is that like?
So I've, to kind of give an idea of what my, supervision, or what that looks like too, is right now I have one supervisor, and I've had this supervisor throughout the very last year of my graduate school. And
That's
I've
cool.
Actually, let me start over with that, because I've had more than one supervisor. My most recent job that I had left was with community-based agency. And so I had a supervisor there, and then I've had a supervisor throughout, the last year of my graduate studies. And I've received like a lot of good feedback from them. And I think that's one thing that, if you are someone listening and you're in actually, whatever profession, I really have learned that it's really up to you. It's up to me to go find that supervisor. And that relationship is really important, especially in our field. That is having like a good supervisor, someone who's going to be, honest with you, who's going to give you good feedback and who's going to, train you really well. And that's something that I had learned that I wanted that. I didn't want someone just to